In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful Podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. In the harmony of life, music becomes the bridge to understanding, compassion, and change. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcasts. I'm your host, Sam Pepin, and today we're exploring three transformative themes: the universal language of music, using creativity to foster unity, and empowering communities through jazz. Our guest today is Rick DellaRatta, a world-renowned jazz musician and founder of Jazz for Peace. Rick's works transcend borders and conflicts, proving that music can unite people across divides. Through his visionary organization, he combined artistry and philanthropy, using live jazz concert to empower nonprofits and promote nonviolence globally. Rick's inspiring journey will resonate with anyone passionate about the transformative power of creativity and community. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let the world know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Rick DellaRatta, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you, Sam. Great to be with you.
It's fantastic to have you here. It's my first time actually meeting you, and what you're doing with your organization I think is fascinating, and we are very, very honored to be able to platform you. To kick us off, please tell us more about Jazz for Peace.
Well, boy, there's so much to tell. That's the problem. Where would you like me to start? I mean, you want to hear the very beginning, or do you want to hear?
Start with the overall missions, with what you guys are trying to achieve in this world, perhaps.
Well, our overall mission is to try to basically, at this point, try to see if we can implement some of the things that we nearly unanimously agree about as a species. So, I mean, you have these things. Really, what we have you see a lot in the world is it's almost like a soup, and you take this out and that out, and now you're looking at it this way. You take that, but you put those in, and you take these other ones out, and now you have it looking at it that way. And you could almost do that and have Republicans and Democrats. You can have Serbs and Croats. You can have Palestinians and Israelis. You can have anybody if you take these things out of the soup. But what we found with Jazz for Peace is that music is a universal language, and there are universal things that everyone is connected to, that they're born with, their innate qualities. And we found that when we play music, nobody asks us when they're listening, there's no, nor do we ask them, you know what I mean? Are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? Are you a this? Are you a that? They just hear the music and they react in a natural way. And that's where we find that Serbs and Croats, I'm just giving any two out there, but I'm just saying any two of these people all of a sudden have so much in common. Like, how did you guys all get on the same page here? You love this song, or you love this music, or you relate to this artistry. How could this be, But what we did is all of a sudden now the soup is not missing the carrot. It's not missing the potato. It's not missing the chicken, if it's whatever it is. It's not missing ingredients. They're both getting the same thing. And now we realize, wait a minute, we have something that both sides agree on, or that unites them, or that brings them together, or is a commonality. And then when we put that together with outstanding causes, now we have supersized it. Because, when I go to, let's say, Las Vegas, and I play a concert to help the youth of Nevada, they both show up. You know what I mean. Country musicians and rock musicians show up. Democrats and Republicans show up. All kinds of people who are on different sides of people opposing a casino and people supporting a casino. I mean, all kinds of people will show up for, and so now you're not uniting two things. So the more we're able to do this, and the more things we're able to unite, the more we find out that hey. With these commonalities, we actually can find solutions to a lot of problems and maybe even implement them before it's too late.
Beautiful. And I love what Bono had to say on this, which is music can change the world because it can change people, right? And I want to first start with your specific career, because some of your work obviously had some global impact, which is obviously very lovely. But I want you to take me back to your background as a jazz musician. Take yourself back to the very, very beginning of it. How did that emerge, the love of jazz, and perhaps you becoming a musician in the first place?
Well, I mean, my very first day as a musician was basically just walking up to a piano that was in my living room on Christmas Day that I figured Santa Claus must have brought in because it wasn't here yesterday. And I just went up, and put my fingers up standing, not sitting, and because I wouldn't be able to reach it. And I was playing and listening and playing and listening. And I was really trying to figure it out all by myself without anybody even catching me. So that was my first experience. And that is an experience that I have every time I play music. There's the improvisation aspect of it. There's the unknown quality of it. There's the discovery process. There's creativity. In fact, there's all of the qualities that we need as a species to avoid the behavior, or to have the best chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. Hence, later, which became a famous quote of mine. And if you type into Google Rick DellaRatta famous quote, this quote comes up that says, if we fill our souls with creativity, artistry, humanity, intellectuality, all of our greatest qualities, basically, if we fill our souls with our greatest qualities, we will have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. And that's what you really need. You need your best chance, not your worst chance, which is what we often find when people get polarized. All of a sudden, it's the worst chance. All of a sudden, you'll see people attacking somebody who's trying to help them maybe, or who isn't even a part of the other team. That's when you see people shunning those qualities. And now they have the worst chance, and sure enough, you have a disaster on your hands.
Absolutely. And that's so cleverly said. And it's interesting because from my understanding, the birth of Jazz for Peace was actually unsolved, and I suppose emerged from a tragedy, from the ashes of 9/11. I would love, again, if you can take yourself back to that time and take us back with you, obviously, because it seems to me like you turn a personal poem into a global movement, which I think what's better than that, especially when it comes to peace and unity. Tell me more about how that came to play.
Well, I'm so glad that we're just audio only, because only you can see me kind of smiling or laughing, because honestly, everyone wants to know this story. Everyone asks this story 25 years after it happened, nearly. And that's just part of human nature. We catch up to things. So there's such a lag between something the artist does and the time that the world or the public catches up to it. And so let me take you back to that moment. Basically, I was on a rooftop. And the reason I ended up on the rooftop is because I received a phone call that morning from a woman who had taken my picture on September 10th. And I didn't know that one of the pictures that she took was going to be the cover of the Jazz for Peace CD. But if you ever Google Jazz for Peace CD, that picture she took the day before 9/11, hours before 9/11, she took that picture. Amongst other pictures. And the reason being is because she was getting pictures for her catalog and giving me free pictures, which is something that artists do in New York. I mean, that photographers do. If they're smart, they'll do that, because you never know what's going to happen to that person. He might blow up someday and you've got the pictures that nobody else has. So she was doing that. Wise decision. Turns out now a very wise decision, but we didn't know at the time. And She calls me because we had spent the day together and she just didn't know who to call because she was down on Wall Street and something crazy was happening. And actually, her boss's son was in the other building. One of the buildings had there was something had hit that building, an explosion, etc. Whatever happened, plane, whatever that was, had happened in one building. Of course, nobody knew at that time what it was, just like something crazy is going on. So she calls, it's like, I'm so sorry. Did I wake you up? Well, yeah, but no problem. What's the problem? Something's going on. And I'm like, look, I'll just go up on my roof. It's no big deal. And I'm less than a quarter of a mile away. I'll just take a look over there. It's got to be some idiot with a kite. I'm figuring I'm going to calm this woman down, And I went up there, because I was on a 5-floor walk up and it was so easy to go to the roof. I just opened this little trap door and onto the roof I was. And now I had walked basically into a movie. I mean, I'd walked into the movie screen, the whole, everything was transformed. I was no longer looking at anything that, that reminiscent to what I would normally see when I go up on the roof of my building, which I did all the time. So now I'm in a situation where there really is, a bizarre situation here, and words start coming out. As the day goes on, words come out. I'm like, what am I going to do with these words? I mean, if I don't write it down, it'll just stay there. The word will be right in front of me. Those words will be right in front of me. The only way to get to stop and go to the next thought is just write those words down. Okay, got them on the piece of paper. Now I'll just think, let everything flow. But then some more words come. Oh my God. So I write those down. And I just write words down as they are being birthed. You know what I mean? I told one lady from Nigeria on a podcast the other day, it was like my water was breaking. But I wasn't pregnant and I wasn't a woman. But nevertheless, I was, giving birth to these words, whether I wanted to or not, whether I liked to or not. I had these words. And so at the end of the day, all I had was a poem. And the poem, I called the poem Jazz for Peace. And all I've been doing since is living up to the words of a poem because, there's a lot that can disappoint you on this planet. And as you get older, the more you realize how much can disappoint you. I mean, you can be disappointed by almost anything except a couple of things. One of them is music. One of them is your instrument. I mean, you will never ever get, so it doesn't dawn on you that something that will never disappoint you could be so special. But the words of that poem have never disappointed me, never let me down. They've never broken my heart. You know what I mean? So it's a high percentage play to wake up and follow the words of a poem that I wrote on the morning of 9/11.
It seems to me like from the ashes of a tragedy, you actually found the melody of hope. I think it's the best way that I can put it. And when you're thinking about music as a catalyst for peace and unity, I'd love for you if you can tell us more about how jazz specifically unite cultures, foster understandings, and perhaps promote a nonviolence globally in society, I suppose.
Well, people used to say shortly after Jazz for Peace, they would say, wow, I see you put this movement together. You have this organization. Why jazz? Why jazz? Why not this? Why not that? And I told them, I said, well, if you look at, because it's kind of strange the way things happen. I don't know. It's, if you believe in a higher power, then this is, then a lot of this would make sense to you because basically it wasn't long after that here I am on an interview and I happened to say that famous quote. The famous quote, which wasn't famous at the time. In fact, I don't even remember saying it, but it gets lifted from the article and onto these famous quotes, websites that I didn't even know existed either. And I've learned more from these websites. I even would tell you, go to a famous quote website if you really want to be inspired. Aldous Huxley and all of these incredible people, you see these quotes and they're amazing. And I didn't even know who a lot of them were. So, I mean, I am no person to pat myself on the back at all. But like I said, they lifted it. And now I do have this famous quote. And then I did start to tell people when they asked me why, I said, well, because look at what jazz is. It has creativity. It has artistry. It has humanity. It has all of these qualities that are in my famous quote that say we will have a better chance. So all of those are in there. And, it was a great American art form of jazz. Of course, I'm an American, grew up in America. But not only that, it does come to my very first point when the first question you asked me. It breaks through every possible barrier and boundary known to mankind. I mean, there's not, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's religion, it doesn't matter if it's creed or culture or race or language. It's irrelevant, and I could go anywhere, which I had already been doing, but with Jazz Trapeze, I really started to go anywhere. And I was met, my music I was met with a connection, I was able to connect with people in a way that you could not do if you just went there and showed up there and didn't know the language. Because I knew a whole bunch about me when I played for them. I know a whole bunch about them when I played for them. I could see what the music was doing to them. I could see how it was affecting them, if it was affecting them, in what way, how it was touching them. I could see all these things. And now I'm learning so much about them. And then they're learning so much about me from hearing my music, that now we have this huge, it's so different from you just meet somebody, you know what I mean? Because you don't know anything. You don't know anything. Now you know everything. You know so much from that point. You've got so much more information, and quality information, good information, information that both of you identify with.
To me, it's staggering because I'm a very big music fan, and I love jazz, big rock, 70s rock type of guy. But it's very interesting because you're absolutely right. I go to my playlists and I have songs in Russian, songs from Afghanistan's Mexico. I have so many Mexicans, basically musicians that I absolutely adore, and it's so interesting because even in a different language, the way without basically any basically lyrics at all, the way music makes you feel is some things that everybody can understand. That's why we call it the universal language. And I want to dive deeper into some of the cultural diplomacy that you were able to do, because you had very, very interesting collaborations with Israelis and Palestinians, basically, and also Americans musicians to promote peace and perhaps understanding through jazz. Do you believe that music is a vehicle not only for peace in peaceful time, but also for peace in perhaps wartime?
Well, they say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So I was really prepared for not only 9/11 with those words and those things that came out, but also to do things with Jazz for Peace, because I had already seen that. I had already seen Palestinians, Israelis, and Americans playing jazz together here in New York. I had done it myself, and I had talked about it myself, and people were really surprised. And people were surprised in general when I would talk about how universal it was and how multicultural it was. And people used to say to me, you should really do something about that, because you're one of the very few people on the planet that knows that these people get along and they play together with jazz with you in a house. And, none of us know that. We all think that they hate each other, that they're at war, that if they even see each other, they won't go in the same room, and not to be done. I mean, I knew for a fact, and I would tell them, I'm sorry, I'd be at a dinner party or something. I was like, I'm sorry, this was like yesterday, so I don't know what to tell you. I mean, things haven't changed in the past few hours. If I had a gig right now, I could call them and they'd be there in a heartbeat, and you'd never know that there was a problem. So, basically, I now realize that it can really do some damage, per se, to people who want war, because it crosses their ability to justify, because what happens with people that are against things or who want a certain result is they try to invalidate every single thing that doesn't. You know what I mean? But when I say to a person supporting Hamas, let's say, look, this is the band that I played with at the United Nations. Now, you're telling me that you want to get me to wipe out my bass player as a final solution of the river to the sea or whatever, and his whole family, and he's blah, 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 after he came down here to play for peace with, you know what I mean? And I do the same thing. The Zionist, I say, so you want, this is here, this is what he said. I mean, they even wrote letters to me to what they said, and it's on the page, jazzforpeace.org/UN. jazzforpeace.org/UN. You go to the page, you see what I'm talking about. So I back up what I'm saying. And it's not even me. So you can get mad at me, but that's stupid because I'm telling you what this guy said. And his words are right on the page. And what do you want me to do now? You want me to kill him? You want to kill his family? You want to what? This is crazy, right? So, why instead of that, why don't you look to the fact that overwhelmingly both the Israeli people, who I've been working with for 24 years, and the Palestinian people, who I've been uniting and working with and communicating with and playing music together, are actually against you. They're against you two guys. They're against the Zionists. Actually, the people who have the most in common are the Zionists and the Hamas, the really far left. They have everything in common, right? The hardcore people, hatred, check. Wants to kill each other, check. Wants war escalated, check. You know what I mean? They have all these things that are completely in common. But now let's look at 96% of the Israeli people, the Palestinian people, and even a higher percentage of the rest of the world, because we did a poll, by the way. We did a poll, so we know this. Yeah, we did a poll. Okay, well, basically, we started, because I have a book. And the book, I can't show you because it won't be on video, but the book for your listeners is called Paving the Path for Peace Through Music. And nobody knows how important this book is because the mainstream media doesn't, Oprah is not on speed dial with me. I don't think I'm going to get a call. I don't know. She should. I think Oprah would be a great idea. But anyway, she hasn't called me yet or whatever. These people that will I haven't heard from them. But I'm telling you guys, I could back up everything I tell you if you check out this book, and it's even on Kindle, so you can get it for practically nothing. But the point is, I had the book coming out, and the book was stuck at Amazon, and I mean stuck. And I don't know what they were doing. Were you reading it or what? What are you guys doing? Because it's not coming out. They're claiming it's stuck. They even use the word, it's stuck. So how does it get stuck? How's that happen? Right. But check this out. In the book was me calling out social media platforms. And I'm happy to tell you right now, they do weird stuff. They will shadow ban your content if they don't, and so what is it could be, certain lawyers for a certain sect or whatever. Those lawyers will attack the social media platform for whoever it is and say, well, you got to do this. You got to get them to agree to this or that. I don't know. But all of a sudden, your stuff doesn't get seen by anybody. Even your own followers can't see your content. You see YouTube people talk about it too. I lost all my subscriptions. Hey, everybody, can you all resubscribe because my subscriptions disappeared? What is this crazy stuff? And you could go and find those subscriptions if they disappeared. They don't, they're not deleted forever. There's a Wayback Machine or something that these companies could retrieve it. So it does make sense, and I was complaining about it in the book, rightly so. But see, when I complain about something, I show serious. I was taking screenshots and putting, there are pages of actual dialogue in that book. So I'm not gonna. I don't just say stuff. You know what I mean? I was really showing stuff, and all of a sudden, guess what happened? Stuff that I was posting and Jazz for Peace was posting and volunteers were posting stopped getting, in other words, they were forgetting to shadow ban it or monitor it or whatever. A post would go, woo, like 1,000 impressions in 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 1,000, another. I'm like, oh my God, this book is blocked. These impressions are soaring because the content that we have is content. There's no human being that's not interested in these world solutions. There really is not. So the content was going wacky, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, you know what? This is a dream. I don't know, a pipe dream, but if this thing hits 1 million impressions in 1 week, I'm documenting it. I am going to document that because who's going to believe me, right? I mean, if they turn that little shadow banner back on, no one's going to believe me. So no one's. So that's what I've had to do all the way through, though. By the way, with the United Nations, with this, with that, I've had to video, all the trips to Africa and stuff like that. I've had to document it because nobody will believe it. Because even I come back here and I'm gaslighted myself. Podcasters like you have to remind me, hey, you flew into Pakistan at 3 a.m. unarmed and played a concert to, help. What was it? What do they call it when you can't read? Illiteracy. 90% of the country's illiterate, by the way. Anyway, these stories can go on and on, but we got hit 1 million, and I cop documented because I got something from LinkedIn that said it. Your posts have received over 1 million impressions, for the past week. They send you that tally, and I document. I put it in. I'm like, okay, if this many people are looking at our stuff, we're gonna have a poll because I want to see what people really think of this crazy activity. You know what I mean? So we have it, and basically it was a poll, and you had 3 choices. And see, by that time, Jazz for Peace, because people ask us, what is your take on this? What is your take on that? And with this conflict, we wanted to make sure we had been answering questions. We had a proposal, and we had been answering questions from both sides, both extremes that asked us questions, and we just answered them. And we had 23 pages, I believe, of frequently asked questions. Everybody's question answered, because we would stick at them. I mean, I don't care if you were from Hamas or if you were from Zionists or you were somewhere in between. You ask a question, we would say, "Is that okay?" And we would try to get to see, and they would at some point they would say, "We're good. I'm good. I'm good with that." Don't leave me alone now. I got the answer. I'm okay. All right, you sure now? Yes. So they were good with it. So we have questions, and that what we started to notice was that people would have 1 million things to say to us when they didn't look at the information. And as soon as they started looking at the information, they had less and less and less questions. By the time they were done looking at the end, they'd have no question, because we had answered them all. So we put that link, we made that link available, frequently asked questions, and we gave you 3 choices. The choices were the Jazz for Peace nonviolent solution to this matter. The nonviolent solution that's a win-win for both parties, we believe. Okay. The other one was keep everything the same as it is. Keep everything the same as it is. And the other one was escalate the violence. That was the third choice because that's the only 3 choices I know about. I only know these 3 choices. Go vote. And we put it up not for 1 week, for 2 weeks. Okay. So we were getting 1 million a week. So we put it up for 2 weeks. And we posted that thing all over the place. Okay. And because we knew what I cared was that it was looked at, was that it was seen. Because a lot of people, they're afraid of this or afraid of that. But you know what? If you're looking at the results are showing every day, the results are showing. Okay. And we got up into the 60s and 70% early, like we had a big lead. Jazz for Peace came out of the gate, screamed out of the gate. I'm like, wow, this percentage is pretty wild. And just kept inching up. And I'm like, where are these people that want this crazy war? Where are they? Show up and freaking vote. I mean, you're getting embarrassed here. You know what I mean? You're getting annihilated by this poll. Throw your, you could, and the thing is, you can bring down the percentage by voting. You can do it. Come on, you guys. Can't find, because you know what? A lot of them that are out there aren't even sincere themselves. They were bought. I was catching a lot of people that when they argued with me, and because they didn't know who they were talking to, I could tell that they were scripting. They would ask the same kind of questions as the other guy. And these were people I never heard of. You go to their profile, it's very nebulous, who is this guy? Is this a guy? Is this a person? And you don't know. And they would ask me, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, this guy's really smart if he's talking to anybody but me. He has no idea he's talking. No idea. He's done no research on me. He just thinks he's got like a one-size cookie cutter fits all. I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that, and everybody's dumb, so everybody's going to get knocked out by my line of questioning. You see what I mean? man, when I got to some of the things where I told you, like, okay, which one of my band members you want me to kill, or things like that, other things. I mean, we snapshotted them. I'm not even telling you the worst at all, but there's a lot of reasons why you're going to have a hard time arguing with me on this. You know what I mean? Disappeared. Not only would they disappear, they disappeared from the internet. I couldn't find them even on LinkedIn. So that's why I'm saying the reason a lot of these guys couldn't vote for, you know what I mean? Because they probably, I mean, we don't know. I don't know. All I can tell you is at the end of the poll, it was 96% Jazz for Peace. 96. 4% was keep things the way they are. Okay. And I'm going to tell you another secret. 0. Yeah, it was 0. Completely 0 for Escalate, which was what happened. Which is what happened. 0 now. Something that was voted by 0% was implemented. It's an oxymoron without any oxy.
Right. Yeah, it is. It is. Let me ask you something on this. No, absolutely. And you've been traveling the world and so on. And so much of our political structure reside in democracy. This idea that the people actually have a chance to cast their vote, but most importantly, have their voice heard for the direction of the country. Now, very often, and your poll is an outstanding example of this. 96% of people actually voted for Jazz for Peace, nonviolent solutions. 4% stay, let's stick to relatively the same. Maybe people that are perhaps risk averse or are afraid of change, which are, many people are just like that. 0% were for escalating, yet the conflict escalated. Now, what does that say about perhaps and this is a difficult question, and I'm pulling you on the spot a little bit here, but I think it's very relevant. What does that say about the people in which are in power and continue to get us into these endless wars, even if it's against what the people of both of these nations and the rest of the world actually thinks? Why is that keeping on happening? Do you have an idea?
Well, one reason is that we are very discriminatory at who we even allow to help us on this planet. Okay. So for example, the Julian Assange situation, of course, Jazz for Peace has to weigh in on these. And I decided to do a series of performances to free Julian Assange. And I was performing a very specific, freely improvised jazz composition, which was really a free jazz. And it was called Free Jazz Without the Z's. So Free J-A. And that I was performing to free Julian Assange. And I thought, I'm just going to do a bunch of these. I'm not going to really make a big deal and contact people and get in. But when I get up to like 50, I'm going to contact these people that claim they want to free Julian Assange because they're going to need my help, and they're going to see that I'm serious because I've done 50 performances. I'm not just, somebody who, took a couple gave away a couple of turkeys on Thanksgiving and wants to call myself a philanthropist. So, I get up to 50 and I'm 51, 52. I keep the performances up. I'm even up over 100. And I don't hear from any of these people, and they're unreachable and I can't reach them. These are the people that you see screaming the loudest for Julian Assange's release, right? Meanwhile, years and years and years, they're getting nowhere, but they're not acknowledging the other people on their team. You see what I mean? It's almost as if Julian Assange, in their mind, Julian Assange is in, the Ecuadorian embassy saying, okay, let him, he can free me. This one can free me. And this one, only you three can free me. Everybody else cannot free, like, what are you talking about? This guy's got to get out of here. He needs every single person he can get, but it's the way they behave. And so you have these people that are in these polarized situations and they're not doing what needs to be done. And you know what? It would take the world to stand up and say, hey, we want you to listen to Jazz for Peace because because we outnumber you 8.3.9 billion to 400. You know what I mean? So we need you to listen to us. That's what it's going to take. And it even affected the presidential election because they wouldn't listen to us. When we told them, you guys are going to lose if you don't take a look at this. You guys are going to lose that election. You're going to. But they didn't listen. They didn't listen. So and then they lost. And then after they lost, guess what they did? They came out screaming and yelling, "Oh, we've got to stop this war." He's Bernie Sanders. But where was Bernie Sanders before that? Where was he? So this is and here's the thing. We have knowledge that they don't have, that they won't listen. They won't even listen to your podcast. So I'm going to tell it on your podcast and they won't listen to it. Watch. We had there are Palestinian supporters who clicked on keep the bombing the same, even though it's their own people getting killed. Do you know why? Because they want 97% of the world to hate this war. They want 98%, 99%, because they know the more that these people keep doing this, the higher the percentage is going to be against them. So they're even throwing their own people. They're even saying, no, keep it going longer. I want more. I want them more. In other words, they want to, because I want everybody to hate the people that are responsible for this genocide. So more genocide, Keep it going. Yeah, they didn't say escalate, but they did. I caught them voting to keep it going. So in other words, imagine if you're involved in this, escalation and you don't even know that your enemy is voting for you to do it.
Yeah, no, those are powerful thoughts. I wonder.
It's very similar, by the way, to World War II. You listen, by the way, you see these crazy things all the way through history. If you look at World War II, you'll see a scenario where Hitler, all apparently whacked out on meth now, according to, and all these drugs from his drug doctor, now that we're supposedly know. But anyway, screaming and yelling at his generals to keep attacking this really cold region of Russia. They were up in Russia. I don't know why I can't remember the name, but it's a city. They're trying to capture this city. And they shouldn't be. They should be retreating and coming back in the spring or whatever, not in the freezing cold. And Hitler's screaming to do it. And the Russian people are like, wow, they're so stupid to keep attacking us. We're going to do this. And while they kept trying and futilely trying to catch a city that was too cold for them to catch, or 20 degrees below zero, it's not going to happen. They surrounded them and cut off their supplies and ended the war. Because in other words, they went so far over, So eventually you get to the point where you're like, okay, keep doing that. Nice, keep doing it because you're going to lose even worse. And that's what people believe. They believe they're going to lose even worse. So keep attacking. You're going to lose even worse now.
That's right. It's actually in Art of War by Sun Tzu, right? When your opponent is making mistakes, let them continue to do so. And yeah.
That's part of the 4% is my point. Even the 4% is compromised.
Let me ask you quite direct questions. What's the solution for that? If we are on the same page concerning most people want peace, even the 4% that wants to stay the same, which are the one getting bombarded, also are compromised. The world leader are compromised. Where do we go from here?
Well, I have what some people are saying is going to be my new famous quote. I'm not in charge of famous quotes, obviously. I didn't even know I was going to have one. But some people say this, if it doesn't become a famous quote, it should have become one. It's something, a new thing that I said that people are resonating with. And that is, and I don't even know if I have it memorized. It's basically, sometimes the will of the people must be considered because governments are not always right, and the will of the people is not always wrong. So that's the gist of it. So, it's going to come, it seems to be that it's going to come down to that because, you're going in an area of which common sense, you're getting so far away from common sense. You know what I'm saying? And this happened in the election too, where people said, I don't care how bad the other candidate is, we're not voting for you because you have taken us too far across the line of common sense. You've told us that we can't give our own viewpoint. We can't think for ourselves. We can't say what we feel. We can't do our own research and come to our own conclusions. Otherwise, we're gonna be punished. These are not. This is not what anybody who follows the Constitution of the United States of America ever signed up with. So, it's likely to come to something like this because I think I the message I'm trying to give is very simple. We got ourselves into this mess for one reason and one reason only. Okay. I simplify things even down to a single word a lot of times. I really do. But this is real simple now, Sam. Check this out. And it's amazing that you'll see nobody mention it now. The rest of the day, good luck finding any mention of this. We are funding war, Sam, at 100%. 100. We are funding peace at 0. And then you wonder, I wonder why things are a little bit out of line here. It's insane to do this and expect any different kind of a result. Now, what I'm proposing is if you look at the achievements of Jazz for Peace, and we actually have a page that I direct because it was an archive page. It's called jazzforpeace.wordpress.com/about. And it's just that page. You go there and you'll see testimonials from hundreds and hundreds of our grant recipients who have been the recipient of these concerts. None of our words, all of their words. Just read what they say. I don't even want you to hear. I don't even want to weigh in on it. It's too many words. You'll never get to the bottom of it if you ever go to that page. Type it in your computer. You'll freak out. Anyway, I just want to fund. I want everyone to get together and say, look, world peace is going to go up. We're going to fund world peace at 1% 1%. And sorry, war, but you're going to have to come down to 99. Do they have a right to be pissed off? 99. They're still going to be at 90. No, they're going to be at 99. You don't get mad at me. You're at 99 still. With 1%, I could do it. Just 1%, I could do it. But that's how skewed it is. That's how sad it is. I mean, they need all of that to do all of this destruction. And all I need is 1% to straighten it out.
I love the imagery. And you're talking about grant, and I think that's such a vital portion of this conversation. So let's dive a little bit into it. Obviously, the Jazz for Peace Empowerment Grants, I think is how you call them, and it's basically changing life through music. I think is the best way to look at it. It seems like obviously you provided over 850 grants now to nonprofits worldwide, and truly trying to what seems to be enabling them to grow and achieve their missions. When you're thinking of you as a performer, but then Jazz for Peace as or basically an organist for peace and just growth in general, why was it important to go the grant route for some of the nonprofits you're working with?
Well, because, we have these little slogans. One of them is help those who are helping others. And it's way harder for us to go up to all 804 billion people, 8.4 billion people on the planet and try to help them one by one by one by one by one. Our only chance at really making an impact is to help those who are reaching hundreds or thousands of people through their mission and hopefully choosing the ones that are the most sincere and dedicated. And our model brings out people who really walk the walk. They really are dead. Their mission, they're in it for their mission. They're putting their mission statement first. And if you're putting your mission statement first, then everybody's on an equal playing field. You know what I mean? The big one, because if you're not putting your mission statement first, I can tell you right now, there's a woman across the hall from you in your building who's better at whose nonprofit is going to beat theirs if they're not putting their mission statement first. No matter how big they are, know them out because they're actually eventually, causing damage and they're in the negative. Their impact is if they're not putting their mission statement. That's the whole point of a nonprofit. So by helping them and see a lot of people, they don't know what it is. So that, oh, he just shows up and plays a piano and then he walks out and he thinks no, that's not what we do. What we really do first and foremost is we fill a VIP ceremony. That's the first thing we do. So we get these people first to look at what we've done. And usually we don't even get them to do it. They'll send an email to us at info@jazzforpeace.org, and it'll just say something that they thought about us. Oh, I was at this, or I saw this, or I watched this, or I saw Sam's podcast, and blah, blah, blah. They could say that. And then I say, great, what do you guys do or whatever? Well, we do this, blah, blah, blah. I said, why don't I take that comment you just sent already and turn it into funds? Would that be okay? Wow, could you really do that? Yeah, here's what we do. Let me put together a one-page rough draft of what I think will help you get from where you are now to where you need to be. You want to get from where you are now closer to where you need to be. Let me put it one page. I think will help you achieve that through Jazz for Peace. I send it to them. You guys read it, tweak it, send it back to me. When you get to the point where you're like, oh my God, this is a godsend. Let me get this out to my board members. Let me get this out to my blah, blah, blah. Let me get this out to my friends, my family, great. Get it out to them because we want to get their comments on this event. You see what I mean? They give their comments, and now we have a VIP list. And what we'll do is we'll grow that VIP list by getting some other enthusiastic people to do the same thing they did. Give it to their friends and their family. You know what I mean? A couple other people are even fine, however many. But once you have, so we have one VIP list already, but once a couple other people join us and make VIP lists, we might have 4 or 5 VIP lists. You follow me? These VIPs now fill up a VIP room. That gives us a confirmed event. So now we're not going up to Coca-Cola and saying, oh, would you please? Because if you don't help us, well, the whole idea is going to go down the tubes. You know what I mean? Coca-Cola, who's putting out over 8,000 plastic bottles per second. You know what I mean? And that was years ago. They won't even give their statistic now. But years ago, they were going to 8,000 per second. 8,000, of which only 7% of that plastic is recyclable, even if you get it to a recyclable bin. But that's another story. But my point is, we have a confirmed event ourselves. You see what I mean? Amongst us. Now we have something that's valuable to them, not the other way around. You see what I mean? We have something that's valuable to them. So now we can grow the empowerment tree, which is, all these little things from local business sponsors to, publicity and awareness to new and prestigious supporters to larger sponsors and et cetera, all these little branches. And that's what we mean by empowerment and enlightenment. And those are the 2 words that are going to save us.
Beautiful. And success truly isn't just about what you accomplish, but I think it's also about what does it inspire in others, and perhaps others to do as well. And that's such a vital part of music in general. When you're thinking about the power of live music, because that seems to be how you basically raise funds for these meaningful causes, and perhaps how it can transforming basically communities. You just mentioned one, which was one of your trip to Pakistan, with basically the story you just shared, and I'm sure there's just 1,000 stories in your mind when you're talking about live music. Overall, not only from raising funds, but also, I suppose, just the cultural elements. What do you think is just the depth of the impact of live music, and especially a concert from Jazz for Peace? Just tell me more about, I suppose, your the depth in which the value goes, not only in raising funds, but the people that attends, and the narrative as well of nonviolence. Tell me more about perhaps how they take place.
Well, music, and especially the art form of jazz, has the historical precedent behind it of having the ability to have a profoundly positive impact on one person. Okay? One person. I mean, if you do that, no one really understands how massive that is to have a profoundly positive impact on one person, because a lot of people, they go out in their, best jewelry, and they go to this thing, this, whatever they call it, a gala, this or that, and they twirl around to, dance and blah, blah, blah. And nobody has had a profoundly positive impact on anybody. You know what I mean? Maybe it was enjoyable, but we have historical precedent that we've pointed out on our website where you, if one person is profoundly positive affected, it's insane what happens to that person's life from that point. And the person that we put very beginning of the Jazz for Peace website, one of the first things we did was we looked up people who were profoundly positively affected by the art form of jazz, and we chose this guy named Charles L. Black. And this was a man who was basically just basically a racist by default, because he grew up in a Midwestern town that was very racist, but he didn't know it and nobody told him. And so you just think that way. You see what I mean? So he goes to a dance, some kind of a high school dance or a school dance or whatever, someplace where he's supposed to, meet girls. And he ends up focused on the band that's playing and watching one guy play a trumpet, really focused on this guy trumpet, and he's not doing what he's supposed to do. So obviously he left pretty empty-handed that night on the women's side, but he was convinced that this person that he watched play the trumpet was a genius. And this is, how people want to make up their own mind. Everyone wants to put their stamp. I know this. I have come to this conclusion. He came to that conclusion that the person played the trumpet. Well, years later, we found out that it was Louis Armstrong that he saw that night. Louis Armstrong just happened to be in the band that was playing there at that day. But he was convinced. But now he's like, wait a minute now. They're telling me that Black people can't vote. But I just saw a genius. How could a genius not be allowed to vote? How could a genius not be allowed to use the same bathroom? How could a genius, you know what I mean? And so it started opening up all of these questions. You see what I mean? And basically, that led to him he became a lot more intelligent than the other kids because it opened his mind. You understand? And now he started exceeding his class, exceeding other people. And his school, he started, his mind was exploding with all kinds of truths that everyone else was being held back with, by default, let's per se. But now this opened that door, that opened this door, that opened this door, and he ends up in Congress, a member of Congress. He ends up authoring some of the great Brown versus the Board of Education. He's the author of famous documents, all kinds of stuff. And towards the end of his life, they had this interview for the Smithsonian Institution or somebody major like that. And they say to him, what do you think it was that caused you to all these achievements? You came out of that little school. Why you? He said, I'll give you one word. He said, jazz. And then he told the story. Yeah. So my point was, here's a person we have documented proof profoundly positively affected. So now look at the advantage that we already have, because we might have a profoundly positive, my performance that night might have a profoundly positive effect on one person. That all by itself is a grand step.
It is, absolutely is. To me, and even in the way you talk, you use a lot of metaphors. Actually, you're a very creative person, so that I think you just flow into to the way you discuss. I love what I think it was George Gershwin's had to say on this, which is life is a lot like jazz. It's best when you improvise, and which I think is a fascinating quote. And love if we can dive a little bit into kind of like your philosophy on improvisations, resilience, creativity, and perhaps some of the parallels that you basically can draw between jazz and life itself.
Well, I'm so glad you asked that, because by playing jazz, you see that there are options that you might not see in real life, you know? Um, like, for example, there's an old parable, and they can't even find out where some people think it's literally goes back 2,000 years to some ancient part of China, and it's called The Old Man and His Horse. And basically, this old man has a horse. One day, the horse takes off on him, just runs off, takes off. And his neighbor comes by and says, "Oh my goodness, I'm just checking in on you because I'm so sorry about the bad news about you losing your horse." And he looked at him and he said, "Who knows what is good news and what is bad?" And the guy says, "Well, okay, it's a nice outlook. Glad you have a cheery outlook. Just have a good day. I just checking in on you." Great. Guy goes next door, neighbor goes back home. A couple days later, the horse comes back with 4 other horses that he found. The guy comes over and again next door and he says, I just want to come by to congratulate you with the great news that you have 5 horses now." The man looks at him and says, "Who knows what is good news and what is bad?" The guy says, "Well, okay, if that's how you feel, but I don't know. Looks like good news to me. Have a nice day." A few days later, his son gets on one of the horses, maybe to break it in or whatever, bucked off of it, slams into a fence, smashes his leg in a bunch of pieces. Back then they didn't have a lot of, things that you'd need for, medical supplies, etc. He's bedridden. He's a disaster. Guy comes over. "I just so sorry about your son. I just want to tell you, if you need anything." The guy looks at him again and says, "Who knows what is good news and what is bad?" The guy's like, "Oh my God, this guy's just crazy, but I'm not going to say anything. I know he's got a disaster with his son. I'm just going to leave this alone." He goes home. 4 days later, the government knocks on the guy's door. "Hi, we need to take your son for the war. Just started. All the able-bodied kids. I'm so sorry we have to take your son." "Well, here he is if you want to take." "Oh my God, we can't take him. I guess everybody else in the village's son is going to have to die and not this guy." So, in other words, when you're playing jazz, sometimes a bad note turns out to be a good note, is my point. You see what I mean? A mistake, you know? So, in other words, every mistake isn't a bad note, and vice versa. Every good note isn't a mistake. You know what I mean? Or I didn't even say that right. You know what I mean? Every good note isn't a mistake, and every bad note is something like that. Every good note isn't correct. It's not. So that's the other weird thing. If you hear somebody playing all the right notes, you're going to want, if it jazz, I'm probably going to leave. The first thing I'm probably want to do is get up and go home, because it's not going to have that, you know what I mean? It's not going to have that thing that jazz has, the things that we're hoping to communicate. And the only way we can communicate is to allow the channel to somehow open and allow it to feel through us. If we try to credit ourselves, we're going to screw up too, because it's not even about us. It's about something that flows through. And if now you see something flowing that's magical and you're like, wait a minute, you'll see parallels in life, is my point. There are parallels in life where, whoa, damn, this is all stuck because it's missing that natural flow. You know what I mean? You'll pick up. So in other words, you can use these things that you learn in, Tai Chi and jazz, and you can use these things that you learn in jazz and, your normal in life. In other words, you find parallels and stuff. So was that your question? I ain't even sure.
It was. No, and I thank you so much for this story, because that's exactly what I was looking for. One thing that you mentioned, which I want to rebound on, was the story of the man that jazz planted the seed, the awareness for him to be more open-minded, and therefore completely change his life and perhaps change the world to some of his work. When you're thinking about music education and its role in shaping a better future, Can you tell me more about just how important, put some emphasis on the importance of music education, and perhaps if that's a line in which Jazz for Peace are trying to get their impact in front of as many people as possible? Because if we both are in agreement, which we are, that music is not only the universal language, but is one in which can cultivate stronger cultures, non-violence in this world, which has been a problem ever since men's are apes, as we like to say. Tell me more about just how big of a portion that will be in modern education.
Well, here's the problem, okay, that we're facing right now worldwide that's gaslighting all 8.4 billion of us practically, but everyone who is in touch with technology and the world and the fast paced world that we live in, okay? We think we're flooded with everything, okay? And when reality, in many, many of the most important instances, we are receiving nothing, nothing at all, even though we think we're flooded with everything. So we end up in this really strange scenario. And I'll give you an example. I was asked to contribute to a book on music a few days ago. And what I said, okay, I'm going to confuse you. I don't know if you're going to be happy with what I have to say. There's no, we just want your contribution. I said, if you're not going to, get mad at me, I'll give you my contribution. I'll tell you my 2 cents. And I did. And I told them, I said, let's look at history. Okay. Let's go to the geniuses through in the past. Let's go to a Vincent van Gogh. Let's go to a Mozart. Let's go up through jazz to a Thelonious Monk, to a Charlie Parker, to a John Coltrane. Let's look at these people and what do you see? I'll tell you what you see. You see that the very top people, the people that had the most to offer, 0% of the public ever heard them in their lifetime. And I'm telling you, it's a big difference because when you hear somebody in your lifetime, they're creating a statement for you because they're alive and they're creating you're alive. So their statement is for you. When you hear it 50 years later, 100 years later, you're hearing a derivative of that. You're hearing what Beethoven created for somebody in the 1800s. He's not creating that for you because he doesn't know who you are. He's been dead for, you know what I mean? So yeah, and this is the fractal. This is the banana peel that we cannot stop slipping on. Okay. And and I said in my thing, and I don't know if it publishes it, I hope you get a copy of the book, but I said, listen, in order to bring world peace from 0 to 1%, we have to bring funding for outstanding artists from 0 to 1%, because Mozart was buried in a pine box. Okay. Some of the people who were just as great couldn't even afford a pine box. Okay. So just because you have music going on all day long, 24 hours a day, doesn't mean you're even getting close to those people. Doesn't mean you're ever going to hear the Mozart of today, the John Coltrane of today, the Thelonious Monk of today during his lifetime. I'm willing to say you're probably not. It's 0%. So that's what has to change. We have to create a situation where we have a better chance to uncover those people during their lifetime. And if you want to prove me true, go out to your deli or the street where you are and just ask the guy if he's ever heard of Jazz for Peace. After all this, right? After 850 concerts around the world, after all that we've done, ask him. He's never heard of it. No idea. No idea.
How often is it? How often is it that you come across somebody that actually heard of Jazz for Peace in just everyday interactions?
More people know who I am on this planet than I ever wanted to. So that's the other problem. I mean, I'm okay at cutting it off right here. I mean, I'm okay. I love my anonymity. I don't mind nobody knowing who I am. But see, here's the thing. A lot of times when I do go someplace where they get everyone together who does know who I am, I see what happened to people like Prince, or, these people became famous, these Matthew Perry who just passed away, or these, those people. I see it because, it is overwhelming. And imagine if your whole world was like that, what a disaster it would be. I have walked into places where I just happened to see that. I'm thinking right now of a concert at Paul, to be honest with you, where I was stunned. I mean, I could not get from I asked them if I could get up to just go to the bathroom and come back because there was other opening acts, and they looked at me funny. They're like, "What are you, crazy?" And I was like, and I looked at them like, "What, are you crazy? I'm going to go back." It took me an hour and a half to go, literally 3 minutes to the bathroom. It was just down the hall, but when I went outside, but my point is, imagine if you lost that and you can't get it back. Imagine if you decided that, this fame thing, I'm not too wild about it. You cannot unring that bell. You follow me? So that's one thing. But no, do people, I mean, I was on a beach once in Haiti, and I'm on a beach in Haiti, and a guy said, I recognize you. Well, you recognize because I'm the only white person, and you think I'm the only white person. Seriously, no way. And I'm like, you recognize me because I look like every white person on, you've ever seen, right? No, no, no. And he started saying, no, you're a musician. And he started to describe me. I said, where did you saw me? On YouTube? So in other words, um, you know, there are crazy situations. I could tell you a lot of stories like that. So there are a lot of these crazy stories where people know who I am. I just don't know how many and who or whatever.
No, I absolutely, and that's totally fine. And when you're performing with legends, like I mean, Dizzy Gillespie, for example, which was fantastic. I had a chance to take a look at that, and I'm sure plenty of others and countless legends in your time. And I love what Jackie Robinson actually had to say on that, which is a life is not important except in the impact it has on others. And I think that your life has a profound impact on a lot of people that came basically across your journey. I'd love if you could share with our audience from performing on stage to being a philanthropist, now obviously a business owner with Jazz for Peace, not very close to the nonprofit world. What are some of your timeless insights that people can directly consume and act on to become perhaps more well-rounded and perhaps hopefully more successful people?
Well, I think one thing to do is try to play a good game of life every single day. And it's almost like compounded interest at a bank. You know what I mean? It's because it's very similar to compounded interest because you won't notice anything yourself, but as you go, you will see that, oh wow, that thing I did over there is all of a sudden it's making I'm getting a little dividend somehow from something I did way back. You know what I mean? Like guy who put his money in the bank. I mean, now we don't really have interest. I don't know what's going on with the monetary world now, but back in the day when banks used to pay you interest and it was compounded, you were getting something from a money you put in the bank like 20 years ago. It had compounded and so I would say, doing that, it's kind of like compounded interest to play a good game of life every day, and don't take it for granted. In other words, that crazy parable, I have to remind myself of myself. If I don't, I'll screw up. I'll be like the guy's neighbor instead of the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so powerful and so impactful. Mr. Rick DellaRatta, you were kind enough for your time and some of your most insightful, I suppose, philosophies and quotes and so on. And you also wanted to offer our audience somewhat of a private session, somewhat of a private, basically, piano sessions, it seems like. So I want to formally give you the scene, as we always ask our interviewee to share some of the last thoughts with our audience. Well, I think there's no better way for you to let music speak. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. A lot of people would say, I'm so glad you played something on the podcast because I was listening to a podcast about you, but I never heard Jazz for Peace. I'd never heard jazz. I never heard jazz, some of them say, and I'd never heard you. So I got to hear you on the podcast, blah, blah. I'm so glad you did that. And it kind of became a thing where people would send requests and, hey, because I'm kind of I kind of set myself up by telling people I could play any song and turn it into jazz, even though I have no idea if I could do that. But I'll just give it a try. And they send in their favorite song, blah, blah, blah. So right now, just so your listeners know, I know this won't come out, then it's the holiday period. And people are sending me these kind of holiday songs to play. I even have an album out called Jazz at Christmas Time. So I'm trying to think of a holiday song that kind of might work year round. And there's this guy, Leonard Cohen, who came up with this song, Hallelujah. And people sing this song all different time. I mean, if he has a concert in July, they will be there to hear him perform Hallelujah. So, I'm kind of, satisfying, both aspects now by playing a song that would work in the season, but, it could kind of work in any season. And then I'm hopefully going to figure out a way to let you hear some jazz, what that would be. So let's see what happens. I'll see if I can pull this rabbit out of my hat. All right. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do ya? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew ya. She tied you to her kitchen chair, she broke your thorn, she cut your hair, and on your lips she drew the hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.